oh, the market's getting tougher, so like I'm gonna like cut costs and put out lower quality product.
And we are live. Welcome to the Daily Take. I'm one of your hosts, Godwin, along with my co-host, Brandon.
What's up? What's up?
On the Take Detroit Network. This is a show where we have interesting conversations with interesting people and review interesting products. So today we've got, and continuing with our statistics to set the intro here. All right. So the number of cannabis consumers in the United States is expected to grow by about 4% every year for the next 8 years, reaching an estimated 71 million consumers by 2030. Taking into account United States population growth data, that means roughly 1 in every 5 American citizens would be classified as a cannabis consumer. Furthermore, I remember when the stigma association with weed was very taboo. Now, 37% of consumers use cannabis within their workout routines. When asked why they use cannabis, a lot more people cited stress and mental health as management over other reasons. So today we've got a very special guest, Michael. What is your Fisher? Michael Fisher. Michael is with Overgrown Consulting, which I'm going to label as a big box development firm with a full suite of services designed to successfully and sustainably operate in the industry. And in addition to this, you've been personally cultivating flowers since you were 15.
Yep.
Welcome to the show. Happy to have you. So what do you do?
Well, ultimately,
It's like a big umbrella.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I help people get their cannabis businesses started and look at their properties or find the property for them, do the design work, get it built out, while I do business development consulting to help them get up and running and navigate an emerging industry without standards and a lot of sharks.
So does that mean if I have a bulk sum of money, I can just yo, I want a cannabis business, here you go, and I can just wait?
Yep, you could say, I have this money I'd like to invest. What's the best way to do it? And I'll present things for you to invest. Or you could say, I have this money and I want to have a grow facility, and I'll, just, can you make that happen? And we work something out and make it happen. Or if you have a grow facility already that's going sideways, then I fix them up and get the team back together and change, get the environment dialed in and everything.
And you said you've sort of run rescue missions for a couple of clients already. Can you, how does that work? Or what's usually going wrong and what do you do to rectify it? And I imagine it varies, but.
Yeah, it varies a lot, but there are a few main things,
what are the top 3 big mistakes?
Top 3 big mistakes are people who have had success in other industries and have the investment money, and they're used to cash being king and thinking they could go into another industry that has standards, which this one doesn't. Walk through a trade show, find the people with the certifications, the stamps on the equipment, and all the stuff you think you need, and they put together these beautiful looking engines that are all out of balance. And then you come in and you got to tweak it and make everything play nice together again. Another source of error would be finding a caregiver, somebody that has, and no disrespect at all the caregivers and home growers.
No shade to the caregivers.
Not at all.
That's
where I come from, and I still go in people's basements and backyards and make sure everyone can get medicine grown for not too much money. As a volunteer even. So it's important to me, but. I like to say grandma might make the best cherry pie in the world, but I'm not going to hire her to set up a factory and run it.
Right.
It's a different thing. We have to be compliant with the laws and fire code and everything, scaling up production and making some compromises that really suck for some people that are passionate about the plant, but it's just a different kind of
Like thing. What? Now, I think that's really interesting. What type of compromises might a person have to make, as they optimize a grow?
Mm-hmm. So one example would be, in my personal garden, I like to grow rare strains and older strains and strains with unique, profiles that are going to give me good effects. And if it yields half as much as the strain next to it, it doesn't matter to me. I want the variety. It's like growing heirloom tomatoes in your backyard. If you have an investor who's put a few $1 million into a grow facility, he wants his return on investment, and he should.
Right.
But there's a line in the middle somewhere of how much do we compromise, and how good do we have to make it? How much do we not let go of? So they might want to, lower the quality of the fertilizer or the soil you're using or the lights that you're used to using. And you just have to find that middle ground of saying, okay, maybe I can't massage every stem and sing to them and give them all names, but and maybe I can't tell this investor that I'm going to grow a plant that yields half as much and brings in half as much revenue. And it's hard for them to digest, but
Sure.
it sucks though, because we stand to lose a lot of really good genetics out there.
When you're working with clients, what would you say is the percentage of clients that are needing help or needing something fixed and are like investing into the business as new operators?
I would say, if they're already running, you mean, or if they're
like right now, like as I'm listening to you talk, I'm just picturing that show where the guy comes and fixes the restaurants.
Oh, what's the name of it? Is it Restaurant Rescue or something like that?
Restaurant Rescue or something like I just see Michael going in and being like, "Oh, this is wrong. This is an awful hydroponics."
Is that how you do? This is trash. This is terrible.
I talk to them all ahead, and I've actually been approached, and I'd love to do a pilot or something like that. It's just like that, walking through troubleshooting. I have diverse clients with diverse problems, and there's a lot of drama and everything.
You've been approached to do the show like that?
Yep, to maybe put a pilot together and put it out there.
You might get approached again right after we finish after we finish shooting.
It'd be a lot of fun. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I'll talk to them ahead of time and try and get all the metrics, like how big is it, what are you doing, how many lights, what are the mechanicals, and all the skeleton of it. And then I go and talk to them all, and then I walk through and talk to them all separately. And I tell all the growers, look, I'm not an asshole. I know you know half this stuff already, but like they might listen to me, so let me help you. And you can't say I told you so. And it's as much marriage counseling as it is mechanical contracting.
You had a pretty big stat sheet too. You said you had like over 27 years of growing time.
This will be my 27th year, so I have 26 years, and we're going into my 27th season.
And your stat sheet's pretty big too. So you've been in 6 countries. How many?
I've worked mostly in America as far as commercial cannabis goes. I have worked in, on projects or started to get projects going in a few other countries. And I'm in talks with even more countries out there right now that are starting to opt in as things go international.
Would you say that there are some common trends? And of the industry, is there, what would you call it? Like a underdog or like an underrated, like some that's not everybody's onto, but they should be hip to?
Yeah, let's see. Common trends, I would say people want to start medical. They're afraid it's going to increase crime, whether we're talking about, the smallest village or in Detroit or in Malawi. Honestly, the same kind of concerns. Are the kids going to get into it? Is going to be risk? Oh, we should start medical so people don't think anything bad.
They said that we had some guests on yesterday that said that was what this group in Colorado. Isn't that what they said? Yeah.
He said what? I'm sorry?
That those types of things have been disproven through their activities in pre-existing municipalities now.
Once you find out, once you actually implement a program, you find out a lot of the concerns and the worries that were initially put on the table as reasons to not approve medical are non-factors in the end. That a lot of those concerns never came to fruition, never came to pass.
It's really, at this point, it's shameful.
Fear-mongering.
It's like gaslighting your whole community.
Yeah.
At Chesaning, we got to opt in with a group, this little village of 3,000 people, beautiful village, wonderful community of nice people. But they decided to opt in, and with a group was there as that happened, and 300 jobs were created. The community's getting a lot of support. It's wonderful. And Detroit should have 50,000 jobs by now, and this should be like the mecca for cannabis and future mecca for the whole country. I've been through so many warehouses here with so much power all set up. I mean, I'm 50 to 100,000 jobs if they would have gotten on it. I've got, I call it the ring of fire. Flint area, Mount Morris, Jackson, Ann Arbor, Leone, up to Lansing, people saying, get me as close to Detroit as possible. And when Detroit opts in, people will still come in here, but the vacuum isn't what it used to be.
So Michigan is like the Thanos glove of cannabis. It could be.
Yeah,
all the Infinity Stones.
It's the only place that it's the only place that accepts all of the medical cards, right? Like you can,
From other states?
yeah, from other states, yeah. Because there are 19 states total now. Is it 19?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure.
I actually think it's over 20. I think it might be 21 and 22 now.
What's upcoming? Because like New Jersey, like additional New Jersey,
Yeah.
for example, or some of the other
And then
ones, right?
Mississippi just passed.
It's supposed to.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a big one coming up.
Right. So when you look, that's the thing too. I don't think people realize it too. When you look at the sales numbers, right? So the sales number for the cannabis industry is supposed to be by the end of 2022, 33 billion. But that's retail sales, right? So that's 33 billion dollars in those 22 states. That's
Yeah.
Just retail. So
Yeah,
if you,
it's crazy to think about.
if you look at cultivation and all value-added products and all that, I mean, it's going to be at least twice that. And then people selling the air conditioners and clipboards and scissors and trimmers.
Yes,
And
all the things
Right.
around, you know.
Right. Yep. You have a very valid point. Very valid point. There's the after market, the secondary market that comes with that industry that's benefiting as well.
When you when you've been in this, I won't say industry, but when you've been in this work and in this practice, and even in this profession, because you have to call you a professional, having started from 15,
Yep. Yep.
and you're 41 now.
Yep. Just
I
turned-
don't mean to put you on
No.
blast. It's all the people.
I've accepted it. I'm no, I'm kidding.
When you think of that, I mean, obviously experience is very valuable, but how does that experience show up when you go out and you're helping people set up a grow operation, or when you're correcting a grow operation? What are the big key things that you have? Because you mentioned just before in answering the last question that you meet growers who are also experienced, who have also been doing it for many years. But what is having done it since being a teenager? What type of edge does that give you?
Say a couple different things. I mean, I will say that if somebody is committed and they really dive in, I've seen people who've been growing for 2 years do better than people who've been growing for 10 years. So simply the length of time, is I won't say that I'm inherently better than anyone else in the things that I do, but I know the history of things, and I've been here throughout a lot of changes. I know the plant really well, to the point where I can look at it and tell what's going on. And we're talking about an industry with no standards. So we were talking earlier before taping about like traditional communities versus more commercialized communities,
Sure.
and it's more of like a complex kind of system that naturally balances itself out and finds its patterns that everything follows in nature and life and the universe. If not to get too far out in the deep end.
No, we understand. We're with you.
Thanks. Then you take that and you try to cram it into the commercialized, industrialized world that we're in.
It
And
doesn't
people
always.
get very used to this linear problem solving that. I don't want to use a rude term like domesticated
Yeah,
people, but
I know what you mean.
so they're coming into this thinking that they can take a linear problem solving approach like they would in other industries.
But it doesn't work like
It
that.
doesn't. So you have to be able to talk to the ghost in the machine and balance things out.
You've mentioned several times that this is an industry without standards. When you think about where the industry is going, and it kind of taps into what Godwin asked about trends, where do you see the standards coming in? Do you see them coming in? And really more importantly, what type of standards should be in place?
Sure. I'll give an example of there should be worker safety standards. I went in through one grow that was having trouble passing testing and getting yields and everything else. And, there's a vacuum pump that wasn't dialed in correctly, putting like petroleum lubricant, vapor into the air. Another machine that wasn't dialed properly, putting ozone into the air, where I couldn't see somebody, 15 feet away, their head started disappearing. It was just a, form going off into the mist, and they're telling them, oh, it's just condensation coming out. It's clouds because it's humid in the grow rooms. That's like
Meanwhile,
the
they're
jungle.
inhaling ozone, straight up
Yeah.
ozone.
So when OSHA starts coming around, there'll be standards that are already there. They'll be enforced a little bit more. It's like the jungle from up in Sinclair
Yeah.
about the meatpacking industry.
Yeah.
There's been a pretty big
Or the
cry
fucking gold rush.
for right? Like that's always been the thing in the industry. Like, oh, like Camel is gonna come and start doing pre-rolls or something like that. But I do think that
They probably are.
I mean, that's probably something
It's
that
coming.
But I do think that there is value and standard systems and operations. You are on the consulting end, right? How do you factor in those types of things? Because you're also coming in with the expectation to receive compensation within an industry to kind of create order when order is not really present. You know,
Yep. Yeah.
most people in the industry wake up at noon.
Yep. And I'll stay in bed till noon as many days as I can if it's when it's possible. Not like
Yeah,
it used to be,
I wish.
I'm kind of teasing, but no, I know what you mean though. How do we balance like not killing the soul of the industry and everything, or of a grow while still standardizing things? So
Yeah,
the first step is internal. So I've written hundreds of SOPs. So it's like the playbook. So everyone's doing things the same way. Because once
yeah.
you go from like a 4-person team to a 30-person team,
It's a
you don't
big,
want to
big
have to.
difference.
Is each
Yeah.
one is each one different, or is it the Larry John special? It's just
It, yep, both actually. I have the ones that I've written that are pretty good standard, and some big companies just want them so they can like say I have them and they read them and I know, and then liability blah 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 blah.
yeah.
But it customized to each room, and I'll send in specialized consultants to write them for the people, make it make
Yeah.
sense for their team and all that.
Do you have a big team behind you?
I do. I
I
mean,
was wondering the same thing.
Yeah.
You read my mind, G.
ultimately it's sole proprietorship, but I've got consultants that focus on retail operations, processing, cultivation.
You guys set up like an umbrella, or like a partnership conglomerate.
I've strategic partners that I work with in construction. I do construction management with essentially,
Okay.
and then I have independent contractors that I work with right now.
Right.
That's the way it's worked well for us. But ultimately, if you're talking about all my consultants and all the people who help me with everything and contractors and everything all over, I mean, I could build stuff in 10 states at the same time and tap hundreds of people.
What
So
do
you have
you
a real
tell
network.
Uncle Sam is the bulk of your income? What is the bulk of your revenue reporting to the government? Where do those come from?
I guess I would say, I do consulting and design build work.
Consulting and design building?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
When when you were growing up, did you think that this was going to be your career?
No, no. When I was very young, I actually thought I was going to be a herpetologist. I was really into snakes and reptiles and stuff.
Really?
And then
What is it called?
herpetologist.
I've never heard
It's
that.
reptiles and amphibians. I was just into it as a kid, but
Okay.
that started my love of science. That ultimately got me into regulated cannabis. Because
Who taught you? Who taught you how to grow? Did you teach yourself, or
at first I just planted the plants and was lucky to get females and have them turn out good at 1st, and then just older hippies in my community, some people that I worked with at
put you up on some
McDonald's.
game?
Yep. And I was very lucky to start out organic with these people and to be really kind of like given a lot of good guidance. And then when I moved indoors, I got online to learn even more about setting up my closet. I had this deep, like 10-foot deep closet, 4 feet wide, 10 feet tall.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
built a fake wall in the back.
Oh,
With a little
nice.
panel. And I spent thousands of hours on this website called Overgrow. It was like
Yeah,
an
we
online
talked about that.
community.
Yeah.
the forum website.
Yep. And
I mean that relatively looked like an Angie's List for marijuana. It was like a very OG kind of
Yeah.
totally
site
is
design.
old school messaging board.
Yeah.
Yep.
If
All right.
you if you weren't in the cannabis industry, what would you be doing?
I mean, well, what brought me back into cannabis? So I went back to school for chemical processing and environmental technology, and I ended up doing water quality research, and then I got like an internship doing product development for surface chemistries.
Mm-hmm.
So I do it for like car waxes or stuff to make clothes easier to wash, glass modifiers, things like that. And that led me to do indoor environmental quality work because I work with a technology that's like an antimicrobial surface coating,
Uh-huh.
and we'll put it on a wall or on any surface, and it kills germs as they land on them. And we're doing hospitals and labs and things like that, as well as dialing in the environment, making the temperature and humidity the same. And so I was doing product development in that world.
That's pretty fascinating.
And then somebody who knew I was doing that asked me, it's like, I know you know how to get environments indoors consistent. Do you have any ethical dilemma with cannabis? And I went out to Oregon and I tuned up this grow. I rehung the lights differently, programmed the controllers, changed the HVAC, wrote SOP, and turned it around. And
Wow.
that was my first commercial cannabis experience. One thing led to another, to another, to another, and I've worked in like 12, 13 states, and I've
Yeah.
covered millions of square feet.
Wow. That's a great way to kind of come back around, I guess. Like when you think about the trajectory of starting there, going out around, dialing in, environments, learning surface tech, and now you're back in cannabis again.
It felt so meant to be, you know.
Clearly, it was meant to be, or it is meant to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With all that experience and like all the experience you have now, like what would you say the average cost is to start a cannabis business?
You know, it really depends. There are a lot of different ways to get entry into it. So, you know, starting any small business is going to be expensive.
Right.
You know, if you find the right partners out there that you might be able to get cooperation with, you don't necessarily have to build your own facility. You know, and I love talking to people about that, how to maybe
Yeah.
develop their brand, get support from people who already have licenses.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what I mean. So, I may not know this. Some people may, but there's a statistic out that says that Jeff Bezos in the previous year could have paid every single person that worked for Amazon in the entire world an additional $157,000, and he still would have posted a profit over the previous year. Now, there's a similar statistic within the marijuana industry that states that from 2019 to 2020, there was an 81% growth in marijuana purchasing, marijuana sales. So with that insane amount of growth, I imagine, does that lower prices? Does that increase prices?
It.
What,
No,
I
sorry.
mean, like, go ahead.
Yeah, it's an insane amount of growth, but at the same time, the bigger guys are coming in and they're starting to learn more, and they take knowledge from the traditional market. So really, unfortunately, as there's greater growth, the prices in the stores will go lower. People tend to be compensated less, unfortunately, and it becomes more like conventional business. But you know, it is refreshing to meet people out there that say, you know what, we could all die tomorrow, and we can't depend on the government to necessarily make things better or give people an advantage that should have had it from the beginning. So there are a lot of good business people out there that want to do good for their community and cash in
Are you
some of that
talking
value.
about the undermarket? Is this the black market?
No, I'm talking about that, but then also like the way that social equity should be getting done. You know,
Right.
ultimately.
Uh,
Go ahead. I was going to ask, when you think about what's missing outside of standards in the marijuana market, what do you see that needs to come in to maybe modernize it, to maybe even protect it? We talk about interlopers, big business sort of coming in and impacting the industry for better or for worse. When we talk about the daily take, if you were to give us today's take on what needs to happen within the industry, what would that be?
It'd be good to have a collective of good people that you know want to not have all the power taken away from small operators, be conscious of what's going on in your legislation and the trade organizations that are out there already trying to take away people's rights and put people at a disadvantage and make it harder for smaller operators to gain entry. And then, I'd love to, and I do facilitate and intend to do more facilitation of people working together more cooperatively. So not everyone has to do everything. So where do we centralize production and where do we decide not to centralize production? Should we make it? We could have one giant factory in the middle of the state, but what are we giving up by doing that? Jobs, quality of life, quality of the product, stewardship of the environment. So some sort of collective where maybe trimming, packaging, the branding and business office has maybe a central campus, but a small farmer can get an acre, fence it in, and just ship out what he harvests and things like that.
It's almost like dropshipping.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, that sounds great.
We're about to wrap up. I have one last quick question,
Yeah.
if I can squeeze it in, Godwin. Godwin talked about pricing out and understanding the cost of an operation. What if someone just wants to grow for friends and family? Like, say I want to set up, you mentioned having like your closet. Maybe I want to set up just a small grow in my closet, I want to share with Godwin, like what kind of cost would someone be looking at for that and materials?
I would say that it really depends on a lot. If you're looking to get set up at home, don't underestimate the need for environmental control. So you really have to have air conditioning and dehumidifier and all. I'd get on Craigslist. It's the kind of thing where people buy all this stuff thinking that they're going to be really into it, just like buying a guitar, and then it sits there for a year and then they sell it for a good price. But I would, if you want to put some plants in your backyard and fence it in, it shouldn't cost much more than canning tomatoes. If you want to do it in your house and you're buying lights and all this, it's probably a good idea to have a few $1,000s, and maybe you don't spend it all at once, but it goes.
I wanted to maybe do like two or three, high yield or taller plants. Like let's say plants that maybe get a backyard. How much would that cost?
You know, really get a pot, get a pile of dirt, get a clone. I mean, I could get you that. We could do that.
This afternoon.
Yep, for like I'll give you a plant. We'll go buy some dirt and get it sunk, and I mean $100, maybe, and you can potentially get enough to smoke for the year.
Outdoor seems a lot cheaper than indoor.
Smoke for the year for my like if I get a high yield nice plant.
Yeah, if you get planted now and get a couple bags of soil, good soil, maybe some basic nutrients, but you don't have to overcomplicate it. You could easily, the average smoker, you could easily end up with like an ounce a month, well more than that. I mean, shoot, you could end up with an ounce a week. Potentially.
Well, there you have it. We've had the wonderful opportunity to interview Mr. Michael Fisher with Overgrown Consulting on the Daily Take on the Take the Trade Network. I'm your host, Godwin, along with my co-host, Brandon. And Colvin. This has been the Daily Take on the Take the Trade Network. Thank you so much, Michael. It's been a great having you.